Have you ever heard the word fear? You ever felt fear? Are you tired of letting fear of failure hold you back from reaching your goals? You should be tired of that. Do you wish you could just see some of the mistakes as opportunities for growth? In other words, could you just look at all the mistakes you've made in your life and you look at what you learned from each one of those and saw that as an opportunity for your growth instead of a setback? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to turn a failure into feedback and then use those mistakes to your advantage. Don't miss out on these valuable lessons. So make sure you stay to the end, because the end is where I'm going to drop the bomb. And the end is how you're going to learn how to never waste a good mistake. So let's dive into this. Fear, that four-letter word, I always like to tell people fear isn't even real. We make it up in our head. It's in our subconscious mind. And it goes back to when we were cavemen or cavewomen, when we were afraid that if we walked out of the cave, there was a mountain lion, or I think a saber-toothed tiger would be a better way to look at it, hiding behind that tree. And when we walked past the tree and it wasn't there, we started to understand, okay, that thing maybe wasn't real. But then when you saw the saber-toothed tiger, of course, you started to run. Now that fear is real. Today, most of the fear that we feel isn't real. It's made up. It's made up. Now, if you're getting chased by a bear, that fear you feel, that's real. Run your ass off. And that's the only hope you got. And I guess they say stop and play dead if all else fails, if you can't outrun the bear. But let's dive in. So number one, reflect rather than condemn. Understand why something didn't work. This is the reflection point. Look back in your life at all the times when something that you planned did not work out. And then I want you to think about why it didn't work out. What did you learn? Did you not prepare enough? For speaking, like I speak a lot, but in the beginning, I remember a lot of the times when I would go out and speak, the failures, the mistakes, when I forgot my lines, when you're sitting up there, when your mouth gets super dry and you just can't even barely talk, like those were all from lack of preparation. So what did I learn from that? Prepare, practice, learn the talk, get into the talk, tell stories about your life in times when maybe the material's a little bit hard. Because speaking, some people would rather die than get on a stage and speak. It's like one of those things, like where that fear isn't real. But what do you learn from that? Every single time you go up there and you fail or you make a mistake, you learn from it. So how are you reflecting on your mistakes? What's the last mistake you made? And what did you learn from that mistake? I think this is the baseline for how you never, ever waste a good mistake. Is each mistake is a stepping stone to get you where you need to be. If you're a religious person, like think of in religion, like God tests us. Right? And whatever your religion is, doesn't matter. We go through trials and tribulations through our lives. And every single thing that happens to us, every failure that happens, every bad thing that happens, I don't care what it is, we have to learn from it. And if we don't learn from it, what happens? God makes us go through that test again. Think of like school, like the hardest test you ever had to go through. Like if you failed the test, what'd you have to do? You had to take that son of a bitch again. You didn't like doing that, but that's because you didn't learn the first time you failed. God tests us the same way. Life tests us the same way. The universe tests us the same way. So every time you fail, understand, stop, and pause and reflect on it, because that there is the learning lesson. And if you don't learn from that mistake, guess what? You got to have that same mistake again, and that sucks. Number two, let me talk to you a little bit about fear. And I'm going to frame this up from back in the day when I was a pro snowboarder. I'll never forget this moment. It was my very first pro snowboarding contest. It was in New Hampshire. And I remember I was so fired up. I had just signed my contract with my new sponsor. It was a board company and an outerwear company. It wasn't a bad contract, but it was my first one. It was the pinnacle of my snowboarding career. This was my first professional contest. And I knew all the players were going to be there. I knew the Casses were going to be up top. I knew all of the guys that were going to be there. And I was fired up. I wasn't nervous. And I remember I got to New Hampshire late that night before. I got my hotel room. And the next morning, I was up super early in the morning. And I got on that lift. First time that lift turned on, I got on it. And I remember that lift, like when it was shut down, it was super foggy at the bottom. It was actually drizzling. It was raining a little bit. And I'm like, this sucks. But it's going to be snowing up top. I knew that. Because in New Hampshire, a lot of times at the bottom, it's raining. At the top, it's a winter wonderland. I get on that lift and I'm going up. I got my tunes on and I'm so pumped. I'm just getting ready for just an unbelievable day. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to make my mark as a new pro, the rookie on the circuit. And I remember going up, and all of a sudden we kind of get above the fog, and the lift kind of planes out. Sometimes when the lift goes up, it'll plane out because of the mountain, the way it goes. And I remember at this point where it planed out, I looked over to my left and I could finally see because I was out of the fog, and there it was. There was all the fencing around. There were some people congregating around it. And it was this thing. It was this ginormous jump. And I'm looking at this thing going, oh, no way. That ain't the jump we're hitting. There's just no way. I've never hit a jump that big. Like, there's no way that's the jump they're going to make us hit. I mean, I couldn't even fathom hitting this thing. I've hit hundreds of jumps, up to this point as an amateur, but I'd never hit anything this big. This thing was the biggest jump I'd ever seen. So right at that moment when I realized, because obviously I kind of knew, but you fight it, right? You don't want to believe it. You don't want to reflect on the fact that this is really the jump we're going to hit. But when that sunk in, that excitement was gone, and all I had in me was fear. I get to the top, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, I'm the first one on this lift. I could just stay on the lift and just go right around and lift my board up a little, get over that little, trigger thing, and then I can just take this lift all the way back down to the bottom. Nobody will even know. Well, my sponsors would know. Crap. So I get off the lift. I hike up to where the starting area was for the contest, and I'm one of the first people there. There was a starter, and I remember looking down the runway to this ginormous face, which is the takeoff of the jump, going, holy shit. And then some riders started showing up. I'm just pacing back and forth, got my music on, trying to get that fear out of me. And, hey, what's up? Is about all I said to the other riders. And you're trying to act tough, but everybody's scared because I know everybody felt the same thing. This is a big jump. There really wasn't any super big excitement at the top of the hill with all the riders, like other events that I've ridden at, where everybody at the top is pumped, we're excited, we're high-fiving. No. Everybody was gloomy and, just quiet. And as a pro snowboarder, the one thing we always have to do is we play this game, Rochambeau, to figure out who's going to hit the jump first. We call that the guinea pig. And, of course, I lost. I don't know if it was because I was a rookie. I don't know if they all knew something, but I lost. So I remember I'm sitting there right at the edge, and I'm staring down this face, looking at this jump, and I'm just, in my mind, fear is just building. And I'm thinking about it, all right, if I go too fast, if I just go straight line at this, it's fast today because it's a little rainy and a little cold up here. If I go too fast, I could overshoot that landing because I have no idea how fast to go at this thing to clear it. But I don't want to overshoot it because if I do, I could fall from 30 feet straight down to flat if I overjump it. And that's going to land with, you're going to blow your knees out. You could break your back. You could do lots of things. All right. So maybe 1 or 2 speed checks, but oh my God, if I go too slow, I'm going to smash right into the back of that jump. Like when you go off the lip, there's another knuckle. That's what we call it, a knuckle. And you're going to smash right into the back. And again, that could be the knee to the face. You could break your nose, break your jaw. All this stuff's going through my head. So the fear is just building and building and building. All of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I'm staring at this thing, thinking all these negative thoughts. And a guy comes up next to me and says, Chris, are you ready? Because remember, I'm the starter. Oh, whoa, hey. And I felt like saying to him, no, I'm not ready. But he says, go at will. That means don't be a wimp and just jump, go, leap. So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it, and your palms are sweating, you're so nervous, and then all of a sudden, I leaped. And the next couple seconds is sheer silence. All I hear is, and that is the sound of your board leaving the lift. The edge just cutting into the top of that jump to put you into the spin. I started spinning my back 5, and all of a sudden it felt normal. And the next thing, I rode away. I'd stuck my first trick. Perfect. Had just the right amount of speed. Could have went a little bit faster because I landed right at the top of the knuckle, but I had it. And you know what? The second I left that lip, there was no fear at all, folks. Fear was gone. Intuition came in. All the times I practiced this trick, all the other jumps I've hit doing this kicked in, and I just did what I've always done. And I floated through the air, pure bliss. And then all of a sudden, when I landed, that was it. That touchdown of the board and that ride away, at that point, that excitement was back. But that excitement was heightened because now all I could think about is getting back to the top of that jump to hit that thing again. Folks, how many times in your life have you let that fear stop you from leaping? You see, I didn't. And I went on to have a very long pro career as a snowboarder, lots of injuries, lots of mistakes, lots of learning lessons. But that one leap at that one contest set the stage for everything in my life. Because in business, you're going to have to leap. In life, you're going to have to leap. You're going to have to get out of your comfort zone more times than you're going to be in your comfort zone, because that's what winning looks like, folks. And fear doesn't play a part in that, because if you allow fear to stop you from that leap, you will never get anywhere. Moving on to the next one. Another learning lesson. In real estate, when me and my wife were getting ready to do our show, we were flipping about 20 houses a month. And one of the houses that we flipped was this one. It was 34 Woodley over there in Williamsville. It was this killer house. It was a ranch. Needed a ton of work. But we got into this thing, and we got into it. We got it funded by a joint partner, a brand new partner that we had pitched the deal to, and they loved it, and we got into this thing. But that didn't quite go as planned. And I remember getting into that, it taking twice as long. We had problems with building inspectors. We had everything was going over budget. We were running out of money. And then I constantly had to go back to our brand new joint venture partners. And I had to tell them how we're over budget and it's going to cost this much. And then I was wrong again. And then it was going to be this much. And every time I'm saying this, and our profits just shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until I knew we were going to lose about $40,000 at the end. I had a decision to make, folks. I was scared. Brand new joint partners, they're super upset with me. Now, one of two things could have happened here, and I want you to kind of think about situations in your life. Because they were joint partners, they could have shared in that loss. We could have made them take $20,000 of loss. It was a 50-50 partnership. But because they were brand new and I wanted to do future things with them, me and my wife made a decision. And we made a decision to not let these joint partners lose a penny. They weren't going to make nearly what they thought they were going to make, but we made a decision to make them whole. And that came out of our pocket. All $40,000 of that loss, we shouldered that. We didn't have to. But sometimes in life, you have to make a decision that sets your reputation first. Because you know what? There's going to be more houses. There's going to be more opportunities to make the $40,000, but you can never buy back your reputation. And I can sincerely say that I've never had a joint partner, I've never had any private lender lose a penny for any of the over 270 deals that we've done. Can you say that? Would you do that? Or would you have just said, well, hey, you signed on as a joint partner, so you got to share in this loss. And then your reputation is tarnished, and you don't know how many times that person is going to go tarnish your name. Number 4, from 2009 to 2014, I want to just give you just a quick look at that journey. In 2009, me and my wife, we started buying real estate. She wasn't my wife then, but we started buying real estate. Pennies on the dollar. And up to 2014, I'd amassed 36 apartments. Bought them super cheap because that was right after the Great Recession. And it was a great journey. I was a financial advisor at the time. I was using every penny I made in the financial advisory position to put it back into real estate. I was pretty highly leveraged. I kept using the same bank to get the funding for all these real estate deals. And I remember I brought my 37th door to this bank. And they told me no. They told me, Chris, we like you, but you don't meet the criteria of the bank anymore for lending. You're outside of our little square box called debt to income ratio. And I said, I don't understand. Like, this property cash flows. We've never missed a payment. We've been borrowing from you all along. But what I didn't understand is behind the scenes, the bank had been keeping tabs on me. X amount of properties that I bought, X amount of income, X amount of debt. And as I got to this, I hit the financial wall. And that financial wall was the debt wall, the debt to income ratio wall. And the bank wouldn't give me that loan for that 37th property. But the bank went one step further. They froze my 2 lines of credit that I had, meaning I couldn't use those lines to renovate the properties. And I started spiraling out of control, resulted in me having to sell all 36 of my properties. I had to sell them all. Some I made money, some I lost money, but at the end, I really didn't make anything. It was just a 2009 to 2014 giant learning lesson. I reflect on this. I talk about this all the time because I learned so much. Although that spiraled me into one of the worst periods of time in my life, I learned from it. Which brings me to the final thing. Fear, on all those different levels that I just explained, all of them involved fear, but none of it was real. They were all perceptions of fear. False evidence appearing real. You've heard that. Fear is false evidence appearing real. Outside fear-based influence. Folks, I had to learn the hard way, but you don't. each one of those failures was a lesson. So you can call it a lesson or you can call it a failure, but I could call them lessons because each one was a lesson. They all cost me money, but learning costs money sometimes. Folks, you need to go through these journeys yourself. My stories, my fear perception, my experiences, like all of them are just my past. They got me where I'm at today. What's going to get you where you want to be? Are you willing to fail? Are you willing to learn from your failures? Folks, I really hope you enjoy these 5 different stories I was able to talk about. And I hope you understand that fear really isn't real. It's a perception of fear. Learn that and learn from each mistake you make. If you like this video, folks, you're going to love this one right here, how to get yourself out of debt right now. Check it out. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you on the next one.